According to the sacred calendar, it was the year 1013. In the middle of July, in one of the cultivated villages of the Western Ural Kingdom, the villagers lived peacefully, and children ran around in the gardens. The village guard, the old Gramps, continued his duty, feeling bored and hungry. When he saw a carriage approaching the village entrance, Gramps realized that Kakyu had arrived and excitedly greeted him. Kakyu, our main character, was surprised that Gramps was still alive and protecting the village. Despite his old age, Gramps was one of those who always claimed to be full of energy. Even at night, Kakyu wanted to pay the entrance fee, but Gramps initially refused as Kakyu was considered one of their people. However, Kakyu insisted, saying he didn't want to break the rules. To him, rules were the same as promises, and he was someone who always kept his word. After entering the village, Kakyu distributed delicious food and drinks to all the people. The poor villagers, seeing so much meat and drink, ate ravenously. Kakyu encouraged everyone to eat as much as they wanted because he was covering all the expenses. One of them asked if he was sure about giving away this much meat because it looked high quality and there was so much of it too. He asked what animal it came from and he responded that it was a thunder dragon. Everyone was shocked that he was able to win against a legendary dragon. Alma proved that she was his only ally by defending his honesty, but they were sure that he had a swindler's eyes and face. Jui continued that Kakyu was rich enough to purchase such high-quality meat in large quantities, which made him a good catch. They were so amazed by Kakyu that Gramps wanted to give his granddaughter to him, but he was just drinking too much. Joyful conversations continued throughout the night, and after everyone was left with full stomachs, Arno asked if he was staying. Kakyu was more than happy to stay with them and thanked him. Hearing Jui moan in pain, Arno asked if she was okay and worry and reminded her that she should be lying in bed. Kakyu asked how the baby was, and she responded that it was getting so energetic thanks to the meat he brought. Alma couldn't wait for the baby to be born in a month. Kakyu said he was going to visit them again when he was done with his next trip. Louie was happy to hear that, and she was sure this baby would be happy too. After that, Kakyu went to his room and threw himself to the bed. He was so tired but was still surprised that he was able to live such a normal life. A long time ago, Kakyu lost his life back in Japan. Due to misdeeds, he was plunged into hell and reincarnated as a demon. His life in hell was horrible. He almost got killed many times by various things and higher-ranked demons. Because of the bad relationship between Satan and Zeus, they had constant wars, which meant constant threats to his life. His life was far from normal, but even so, he desperately struggled for 2 whole years. He managed to obtain the wisdom and power he needed to survive in hell. One day, Heaven's supreme deity Zeus and Hell's supreme deity Satan had a duel and Kakyu couldn't escape in time. He was heavily affected by the fight they had, and he thought he was dead for sure. However, when he woke up, he was in another world, different from Earth. It took him a while to understand the situation. He disguised himself as a human and flew all over the world. Pretending to be an amnesiac, he learned the world's language and culture from this village that he found 3 years ago. Now, he was currently a traveling merchant. All of this was too good to be true, and one might believe that he was living in a dream. But he was sure it was just because he was lucky. He had experienced literal hell for 2 years. It was only fair that he got this as a reward. Now, he no longer needed to fear for his life so much and eat good food and sleep comfortably. Furthermore, thanks to that hellish experience, he was ultra strong in this world. This was like an op main character development or his bonus stage for him. Living a slow life on a restart while still being strong was what he had been longing for, and it would be a crime if he didn't enjoy this. Just as he was celebrating his win against the shitty Satan, he noticed Alma standing right next to his bed. He calmed down and asked what he could do for her. She just brought some water to him, and before she left, she gave him something and begged him to take it. It was a pair of leather gloves. She said that her father taught her how to make them, and she wanted to make one for him as she heard that traveling merchants often get rope burns from steering a horse's reins all day. Kakyu tried on the gloves, and they fit perfectly. He complimented them on how comfortable they were and how amazing she was. He promised to treasure the gloves, and this made Alma really happy. She accidentally stated that it was for her future husband, and then got super embarrassed and left there after wishing good night to him. When she left, Kakyu looked at the gloves. The truth was that he was a demon, so his skin was too tough for rope burns and he couldn't marry her either. Demons do not age, and he can't take starting a family with humans seriously because he would outlive even his children. The next day, Arno asked Kakyu to go fishing with him after he was done eating, and Kakyu accepted. While fishing, he noticed his gloves and stated how jealous he was. He then reminded him that he wouldn't give his daughter to him. Kakyu said he already knew that and laughed like something was funny, but this made Arno misunderstand him and he started yelling at him, asking if Alma wasn't charming enough to be his wife. Kakyu yelled back at him, saying that he didn't want to become his son, which he agreed with. Kakyu was still having a hard time understanding what Alma even saw in him, and Arno was sure that it was because he saved her life. Kakyu seemed puzzled, So he explained that Alma had a weak constitution when she was born, and they said she wouldn't live past 10. She always acted energetic around people, so it was difficult to notice, but she was mostly bedridden at home. But around 1.5 years ago, when Kakyu returned from his trip for the first time, she started eating the meat and spice he brought, and now she was as healthy as ever. Arno always wondered what to do with him when he first came to this village. He had an unknown background and he couldn't understand their language. But now he was thankful to him. It wasn't just him though, everyone in the village was thankful to him. Suddenly, Kakyu recalled a tasteless memory from his past life and realized that he was living a completely different life where people were grateful to him. Arno got a good catch and then mentioned to him that a draft notice came from Central, and he decided to join the army. Kakyu was shocked that he was doing this so suddenly. He explained to him that it wasn't sudden, he was a reserve soldier to begin with, and recently, there had been an increase in demon activity in the Ural Kingdom. He was surprised that Kakyu didn't know about this as a traveling merchant. The truth was that Kakyu always teleported when moving so he wouldn't notice, but he didn't say anything. Arno stated that if something ever happened to him, he wanted Kakyu to take care of Alma and Ars. Ars was the name of the baby inside Jis's belly. Kakyu was uneasy about this request, but Arno stated that it was just a precaution. His dad was eaten by a demon and no one would ever know what would happen to him. Kakyu asked if he was sure he wanted to entrust that to him, and he was. They continued fishing after he said that he wouldn't make any promises. A while later, Kakyu was getting ready for his next trip. Alma asked when he would come back and he responded that he would be back around the end of the next month to see her brother. He kneeled and asked her to get close to him. He put on a beautiful dragon scale necklace around her neck as a thank you for the gloves. Everyone sent him off with applause and good wishes. His trip started, and he spent his days doing business, drinking with strangers and friends, and getting good deals. In July, he arrived at the Gitzeria Dragon Kingdom at royal capital Wyverna. The receptionist woman gave him 1 rose insignia and the document confirming his promotion to an intermediate level merchant. With this, he would be able to make deals with nobles. After that, he went shopping. He decided to buy the one the lady suggested. While she was packing the shirt, she expressed how impressive it was for him to be an intermediate, even though he was just starting. He laughed and said that he was planning to brag about it when he returned to the village. The lady then remembered that the Holy Knights were on an expedition in that area right now, and he should be careful. He asked the reason, and she explained that the Holy Knights of the church could detect signs of demons with the blessings they got from the goddess. Once every few years, they were allowed to go on a special expedition to nearby countries to wipe out demons in hiding. It would have been fine, if that was everything, but according to the rumors, they were taking advantage of ordinary people who couldn't detect demons. They would falsely accuse villagers and steal from them. After hearing that, the woman couldn't even see him disappear. He used his mana purge to check on the footprints. He didn't want to use teleport magic in a public area like this, but he was pressed for time. There was a bad feeling inside him. When he arrived in the village area, he encountered hell. The whole village was on fire. He didn't want to believe that this wasn't a dream, but then decided to calm down, while trying to comfort himself by thinking the smoke could rise from chimneys when people cook. Although it was not the right season for it, people would burn dead grass in the field too. He imagined Alma running towards him in excitement but encountered a burning village instead. Gramps, Arnaud, Jouy, and Alma, they were all lying there motionless. He asked Alma what happened and who did that to them. The Holy Knights stated that there were traces of an evil presence in this village, and the meat was dragon meat. No one could defeat a dragon unless they were demons. They asked the name of the person who brought this meat if they wanted to prove their innocence, but Arnaud kept his silence. Seeing him covering for him, the captain of the knights ordered his knights to kill them. Kakyu was devastated to learn that they covered for him and felt guilt in his every nerve for not being able to save anyone once again. He was clueless as to why the world was so unreasonable and why they had to kill those people. His anger and frustration started to lead him to the knights. After spotting their location, he created a fireball that could be seen from every part of the country. The soldiers die in less than a second without knowing what even killed them. Kakyu had lost so much over the past 2 years. In hell, he was dominated and starved. There were only wars and death. Before he realized it, he lost his human heart. He deceived, betrayed, plundered, killed, and consumed their meat and souls. His very soul had become that of a demon. At first, when he came to this village, he was planning to use them to gather information, and if they hadn't told him anything, he was going to kill them all. However, it turned out to be a comfortable place. And after 2 years, he finally laughed at something other than mockery. He finally tasted good food and the hand that held him was warm. And with that, Satan took away even that peace of mind from him. In that case, he gave up caring and decided that if he would lose everything he ever obtained, he might as well destroy everything. His devil self started capturing him and asked if he remembered who he was. His good self was not strong enough to fight back the urge and he turned it into his real form. But suddenly he saw an image of Alma grabbing his hand. He He tried to explain that this could not be stopped, and this was his true nature. He apologized to her and admitted that to him, they were his only family. Alma hugged him tightly and told him to listen carefully. Suddenly he saw a chest in front of him and there was a cry coming from it. When he opened the chest, he saw a newborn baby with the dragon scale necklace he gave to Alma. Recalling that Ars was supposed to be born in a month and the necklace, he was sure this baby was Ars. He embraced the baby while crying his eyes out. He made an unbreakable oath to take Ars as his son and pledged to raise this child to be the happiest person in the world. He was sorry that he couldn't promise him that time, but now he made a promise to him. Ars was going to live a happy life and his promise was absolute. Meanwhile, Zeus and Satan were playing chess while Satan was making fun of Kakyu for using his own soul to make a contract. Zeus had high hopes for him too. He didn't even die once in the past 2 years, and he was the only lesser demon with comparable power to the highest ranking demons. That aside, if Kakyu ends up causing harm in someone else's world, Zeus would burn hell down and destroy all his familiars. They started laughing at Kakyu because the child he just picked was going to kill him in the future. At the Demon Emperor's palace, the king was informed that something happened. One of their subordinates who was following the movements of the knights witnessed the explosion Kakyu created, and there was no doubt about it. The Demon Emperor Zel Melkinos Lucifer stated that the caster must be equal to him or stronger. The demons who heard that couldn't help but express their surprise. The direct subordinates of the Insect Lord who were skilled in investigation and research had formed an investigative unit on the site. But for Melkinos, Theokia acted rashly to gain merit despite being one of the 4 heavenly kings. He told the demon to order the subordinates of all the lords to not get involved in this matter. Hades started teasing Melkinos for being weak-willed. He was then warned by another demon. Meanwhile, Melkinos was thinking about the one who killed the holy knights. He hid himself to avoid being spotted even from the heaven realm, and when they decided to do something, a big commotion happened. Furthermore, he erased his footprints immediately to avoid getting tracked. Since he attacked the knights, that might mean they were not an enemy, but at any rate, the only thing he could do was wait and see. He was sure one day he would fall into his hands. Meanwhile, at the human realm of the Calamiera Church Nation, Saint and his wife and kids were being welcomed by the folk. They were terrified when they heard what happened in Europe, but the princess was giving them the goddess's blessings today. The Church Nation Knights captain Zeid Kruger stated that this was a joyous day. 58th Pope of Calamiera Church Arleus agreed and added that the princess brings hope to the people as a saint. As a follower of God and a head state who protected the people, and above all, as a father, he felt a little weight had been lifted off his shoulders. The people from the aristocratic faction didn't seem to be amused though. But with this, they would realize that this was not the time to have political strife. A saint was born, and that indicated that danger was approaching the human realm. Both Zeid Kruger and Arleus were sure that this child would guide the hero. Meanwhile, our strong demon Kakyu's face was being licked by the goats. It had been a month and a half since he adopted Ars, and it had become a part of his morning routine to milk the goats he teleported from Joln village for Ars. Ars was perfectly healthy. He was actually too energetic and couldn't stand in a place for a second. He started crying the moment he picked him off the floor. He got him on his back and started preparing his milk. Being a father for a month and a half had trained him to make milk without any problem. He boiled water in the pot and then cooled it down to a human's body temperature. However, even though he made everything right, Ars refused to drink it because depending on the day, goat milk would taste different. His child was a bit of a gourmet. At times like this, he uses nut jam and sugar cubes to refine the taste. However, Ars didn't seem to like the milk even with those sweet additions, making his father have a quick mental breakdown. Kakyu refused to get depressed from things like this and tried to get his clothes changed. But this was another tough duty because he kept moving around, making it harder to remove his dirty clothes. Kakyu definitely didn't expect raising a child to be so difficult. He had fought in hell for 2,000 years and mastered thousands of magic spells. He thought he could do this smartly, but reality hit him hard. He didn't know a spell for cleaning clothes, making Ars laugh, or just stopping him from crying. Even with all those hardships, the moment he fell asleep, he realized he was an angel. It had been tough raising him to the point of reminding him of his life in hell, but just by looking at his sleeping face, he felt like his HP was getting recovered. He often wondered if Jui and Arnaud also felt like this too. While wishing that he could show them, he realized that he was about to fall asleep. He immediately woke himself because Ars was sleeping, which meant it was time to do chores. He washed the clothes, cut the wood, and took care of livestock. Last but not least, he did farm. Ars and he had moved out of the village. From Ural, where the village was, to the southern continent across the ocean, a country called Elirant. They were in the forest in the center area. The reason they moved was because he killed the Holy Knights, and it was possible that they would be pursued by the Church Nation. He didn't think they could detect his identity with magic, but he moved, just in case. Now that it was explained, let's have a look at his house. He was using a renovated house of ancient elf's ruined fortress. This was one of the hideouts he found and kept during his wandering before he settled in Yuln village. Although they were in the middle of a forest and hidden away, there were people with sharp senses like the Holy Knights, so just in case, he put up a barrier that could hide any trace of magic. It was kind of run down, but when he was in hell, his house was often reduced to rubble the day after he built it. If he expanded it steadily, he believed that he might be able to build a castle one day. At any rate, this was his dream home that he had been waiting for 2,000 years, and he needed to treasure it. Just as he was thinking about that, lightning struck his house. He immediately went inside to save Ars, but fortunately he was unhurt. But there was a hole in the roof. He wasn't sure if it was a demon beast or a bolt of lightning. While he was wondering what was going on, Ars sneezed, and a huge flame of fire came out of his little mouth, burning Kakyu. It was confirmed that Ars was born with the ability to use magic, but he didn't know the reason. He thought this was normal in this world. However, most of the people in Yuln village couldn't use magic. There was only one possible answer he could think of. It was dragon meat. He always shared his favorite dragon meat with everyone in the village whenever he returned, and he did that for about a year and a half. During that time, only Ars was conceived and born. If the magic power of the dragon meat that Jui ate affected the fetus at its early stage of development, Ars was born with dragon-type magic in his human body. He wondered if his fast growth was also because of that. If so, he was at fault for this. He had burdened this child with a terrible inheritance. It would be difficult for Ars to live normally in human society now. He realized that this baby who had just thrown him to the roof with his flames had only him. His only choice was to use earth magic to make dolls that he could freely control. They were useless in hell, where small tricks didn't work, but they could at least do chores there. He thought it would be easier for him to do daily tasks, but even trying to teach them the basic things was a tough job because they were useless, and he ended up punching them all. He tried to not get upset because he was originally planning to raise him by himself anyway. Compared to the hell of constant war from rivalry between warlords, raising a single child is supposed to be easy too. As he was hyping himself with good compliments, two demons were watching his house from the bushes. 2 weeks later, Kakyu lost all his confidence in raising a kid alone. Every 2 hours day and night he was soothing him until he stopped crying and then doing chores and taking care of the field and livestock. He didn't even have time to repair the house with magic. He needed to go to work or go hunting since the food supplies were running out. Furthermore, Ars could cause an explosion with a cough and a tornado with a laugh. He shoots a water cannon when bedwetting, and there is thunder when he cries. All he wanted to do was just sleep for an hour. But he was still trying not to lose his spirit. Even though he had enough motivation, he still needed to sleep even as a demon, so he fell asleep. He started dreaming about the day when he was informed that they were moving again. He wanted to stay because he liked the current school he was in, but his father stated that he wouldn't pay the rent. He didn't care because he could earn money on his own. However, his father was not okay with him doing a part-time job and wanted him to study. He was saying that he was doing this for his future. But all he wanted from his father was to not decide his future on his own because he never asked for this. He then went to the other room to look at his mother's photos. When he woke up, 3 goblins were attacking him from his back. Right before they hit him, he slashed them with ease. As he was trying to figure out how long he had been asleep, he realized that Ars wasn't there. The possibility of Ars being kidnapped right in front of him made him feel sick. He went outside and used his Devil Eye Soul Seeker to track them. While running, he was scolding himself for not being very careful. All he wanted was for Ars to be safe. When he caught up with the footprints, he encountered a girl killing the goblins while holding Ars. She looked like a dark elf slave, but he wasn't sure who she was. Ars saw him and called him Dad. There was also a man who spoke a language that he didn't know. He stated that he was that baby's father and asked if they saved him. The man knew the language he was speaking and stated that they were on their way to the Hold City, but then they encountered goblins carrying a baby. He was really glad that they found the father. He asked Urza, the elf girl, to give the child back to him. Kakyu reached his hands to pick him up, but Urza didn't give him to Kakyu because she wasn't convinced that he was his real father. While he was confused, she asked if he knew where they were. They were in the Volkli Great Forest. It was said that a fire dragon lived there, and this was an unexplored jungle that people didn't dare to approach. The old road was far from the main road, and it was only natural to think a lightly dressed foreigner with a child would be a kidnapper. She asked him once again if he was the baby's father. He had been trying not to think about it, but he was also wondering if he really was a proper father figure to Ars. He didn't know that, but there was something that he could say for certain. He stated to Urza that he couldn't tell her the details, but to him, that child was the most precious person in the world. Urza seemed touched, so she apologized for asking him such a question. She felt like she had overstepped her bounds. Kakyu didn't want her to feel like that because she was the one who saved his son, so he couldn't be mad at her, and she was reasonable to doubt him. Once again, he thanked her for saving his son. Urza wasn't even expecting a thank you because she was just a slave. She returned to her cage on the carriage and they left there. Kakyu actually noticed it, but he turned a blind eye to it until she asked that question. Ars only had him and he can't live a normal life. He thought he was raising him for Ars' sake, but this wasn't true. He was raising him for his sake. He was just scared of having more people be important to Ars or him. When he imagined losing them, the fear he was feeling was unbearable. He involved Ars in this solitary life, and this was his selfishness. To not have him experience having friends, love, and dreams wasn't something that a father would do. Even if more people become important to them, this time he was dedicated to not losing them. He changed his perspective on adding more people to their lives. In order to become Ars' true father and to fulfill his promise on that day, he leaned on Ars and asked what he wanted him to do. The image of his family appeared in front of his eyes, and he realized what he really needed. He promised to do his best for him. He decided to find someone who would become a part of their family. In the next scene, a group of demons managed to steal the eggs from the dragon in the Heavenly Waterfall Canyon. While they were excited, they warned each other not to get too excited, as they still needed to get out of there alive. They had walked quite far already, and it seemed like the dragon wasn't chasing them. They were covered with a barrier that erased their presence and magic aura. Besides, they sacrificed 8 combat slaves and 4 S-rank demon apes to sink the dragon into the basin of the waterfall. Even if it was a fire dragon, it wouldn't come out unscathed. They could regain their loss with those eggs. Suddenly, the ground started shaking and they immediately hid themselves. They cannot believe the dragon evaporated the waterfall basin. The dragon took off and was going to the west. Because of the barrier, it didn't notice them. They wondered where he was heading, but if it was heading to a town, that town was going to disappear for sure. That dragon was now an enraged calamity. Meanwhile, Kakyu was super nervous from being in a crowd after so long. This was a port town, Pomola, located along the Elbat River. It was the nearest city to his hideout in the forest, about 80 kilometers directly north of it. It was located close to the highway that crossed the country. The slow-flowing rivers make it easy to go upstream, and overseas merchants communicate in various languages. The forest on the other side of the river was the territory of the fire dragon, which humans don't dare to approach. Due to the condition of the location, it also had a large black market that thrived on slave trading. The reason he and Ars were there was because they wanted to buy a slave to help him take care of Ars. After the kidnapping incident a few days ago, he abandoned the policy of raising Ars by himself and decided to find a family member that would take care of Ars together with him. That would actually mean he was spouse hunting, but even though it might be contradictory, he needed a caretaker who could help him eliminate this current state of being overwhelmed by childcare. But still, he was confused as to why people were staring at him. He thought they were looking at him because it was rare to see a man with a baby, but when a bunch of people pointed at his clothes and wondered which rich family he was from, he realized that they all thought he was rich. Eventually, he escaped from those bullies. Trying to find a good slave was tougher than he expected. Looking around, he realized that there were no good human resources. Slaves in this country were usually people who committed a crime and had their freedom revoked. What he was looking for was someone that he could trust alone with Ars, and who was capable enough to deal with his magic outbursts. Those conditions were making it hard for him to find such a person. Suddenly it hit him. There was already a strong person that he could trust who was also well educated. It was Erza, the slave, who saved Ars. He couldn't believe he missed out on a very talented person and regretted his decisions. While he was having a meltdown, Ars tried to play with him. He realized that he needed to pull himself together and think about what to do next. He overheard 2 men talking about Sabas of keen insight coming to this town. They wondered if a big business negotiation was about to happen. Kakyu was shocked when he heard that. He wondered if it could be Louis Sebasta. Louis Sebasta was the president of the large Sebasta company that dealt in a wide variety of things, from food to gold and even slaves. In just 1 generation, he became the greatest merchant on the continent. He was a super big shot who became the supplier for the Lawrence royal family. Even Kakyu, who was a wood merchant from across the sea, knew him. He didn't know if what they were saying was true or not, but this was good news. If it was a merchant as famous as Sabas of keen insight, he would definitely have someone that he needed. Their goal for today was to find Sabas of keen insight and become acquainted with him. Meanwhile, at the Elbat River, Erza was in an abandoned house on the opposite bank of Pomola. She was thinking about what happened a few days ago. She didn't understand why she was able to trust that man so quickly. She thought she lost the ability to trust what people say. As she was lost in her thoughts, she was informed that the sheep was ready by Sabas. Back in Pomola, Kakyu was being chased by an old man because he burned his store down. It was actually an accident because Ars sneezed and accidentally set fire to his store. When they finally cornered him, he turned to them and wanted to talk about this peacefully. He said that he could pay the compensation, but the man didn't trust him because he had the face of a swindle. This was becoming a serious problem because there were so many people around. He can't just carelessly jump high or use teleport. Suddenly, panic swept through the town as people realized something was amiss. They began to flee toward the ship in a frenzy, while Kakyu stood there, confused by the sudden chaos. It wasn't until he looked up that he understood the reason for their fear. The fire dragon was bearing down on them. The dragon unleashed a torrent of flames aimed directly at Kakyu and Ars, but Kakyu quickly shielded the child from harm. Anger surged through him, knowing that Ars could have been hurt. Although Kakyu had no idea why the fire dragon had appeared, he realized that its presence might be a stroke of luck, as it provided an opportunity to escape. However, as he glanced around, Kakyu realized that the scene unfolding before him was eerily familiar. It was just like the one he had faced months ago. Suddenly, he wasn't sure if running away was the right choice. Meanwhile, aboard their ship, Erza and Sabas spotted the fire dragon. Sabas wanted to turn the ship around and head back to shore, but Erza noticed that the slave children were falling behind in their desperate attempt to escape. Determined to save them, she began leaping from one escape boat to another, making her way closer to the coast. Kakyu was torn, unsure of what to do. If he chose to fight the dragon, many people would witness his power, and if he succeeded in defeating it, the church would surely learn of his existence. The thought of exposing Ars to the dangers of the Holy Knights just to save strangers weighed heavily on him. If he truly cared about Ars, leaving this place would be the safer choice, and it wouldn't be wrong. Yet despite knowing this, he couldn't bring himself to abandon the people in need. Just then, an unknown person managed to chain the dragon's leg, creating an opportunity. Erza seized the moment, using the chains to pull herself closer to the dragon before launching a fierce attack. When she made her first attack, one of the swords she was holding broke down and she only had one sword left. She used a rope to jump around comfortably and started slashing the skin of the dragon. She was attacking the soft parts of its skin to create as much damage as she could, and managed to injure the dragon. The dragon tried to escape, but the chain in its leg was stopping it. It stopped and started growling at Erza. Erza was staring at the dragon unbothered. Kakyu was shocked, and realized that the person who was kicking this dragon's ass was the elf from that time. There was no wonder the fire dragon felt so slow. Its body was covered in wounds. He wondered if humans did this. This might be the reason why it was angry and was attacking the town. Either way, even if this continues, she has no chance of winning. However, she could at least buy time for them to escape. Last but not least, she used her dusk to blind the dragon and body-strengthening magic to attack it. With lots of jumping, slashing, and crushing, it was hard to see what the situation was. The people were shocked and couldn't help but cheer for her, but she barely did damage to the dragon. Using her last strength, she kept attacking the dragon. Kakyu realized that she was only going to exhaust herself and she was just trying to buy time. He told everyone to hurry up and run. The dragon threw her body to the ground. The people continued running away because she was defeated. Luckily, Kakyu saved her from the dragon's flame at the last second and brought her to a safer place. While she was trying to figure out what was going on, Kakyu thanked her for the other day. He said that he couldn't let the savior of his son die in front of him. She recognized him and was flabbergasted. Even though she had lots of questions, Kakyu stated that they were pressed for time and asked if she could use the blinding spell that she used for everyone in this town. She was confused and was about to ask what he was aiming for, but Kakyu asked once again in a firm voice if she could do it. Seeing his serious and a little bit intimidating face, she stated that if it was for a short period, it was possible. He told her to do it right away because he only needed a few seconds. She was still shocked, but he handed Ars to her and started walking. When she asked what he was doing, he stated that he was going to exterminate a dragon. She watched him walk away and realized that she trusted him again. She had no idea why she felt that this person was telling the truth, but she listened to him and made everyone go blind for a moment. Meanwhile, Kakyu caught the dragon's attention and defeated it in a second, just when her magic was over. When he returned, the first thing he did was to ask Erza if she would like to become his child's mother. A few months ago, at the Country of Magic Lurence, Erza was classified with a mission. Tonight, there would be a secret meeting between a Dark Guild's merchant and a noble, and it could threaten the safety of the citizens. Her boss wanted her to assassinate the merchant before the exchange took place. For the future of her country, Erza blindly accepted this mission and it was a success. But when the mask on the merchant fell, she realized that she made a huge mistake. The man she killed was no one other than the king himself. After that, due to the crime of high treason, Erza was enslaved. She objected to this matter, saying that he was the one who gave her that mission. They refused her accusations by saying that Elrod Lawrence was traveling abroad to the Gerard Kingdom that day. She tried to convince them to investigate this matter because the royal family would be in danger, but they didn't listen to her. The king was in a coma and people wanted to execute Erza for that. Although it ended as just an attempt, it was a crime of high treason. Rumor had it that they were afraid of the retribution of the Shadow Clan Harunoito if the woman was executed. That accursed clan was repaying kindness with enmity. Even if you enslave a woman who was incarcerated for high treason, no one will buy her. They burdened Sabas with a troublesome job. While the Guardians were talking about that, Erza was in her cell, still trying to believe he set her up. She trusted him, respected him, and was loyal to him, yet he did this to her. More importantly, she couldn't believe she was going to kill his majesty, whom she respected and loved like a father. She didn't want to be forgiven for this crime. After that, Sebas came and took her. He was planning to take her to Elvrond because someone might be interested in buying her over there. They were going to avoid inspection, so they were going to go through Volkli Old Road via Nagrasha, and if magic beasts were to appear on the way, he was counting on her. After that, she saved Ars. She wondered what she should be doing to be able to atone. Back to the present, she froze there when Kakyu asked her to be his child's mother. Kakyu realized that he said it like a marriage scammer and tried to explain it to her. Sebas came and asked if he was disturbing them by any chance, noticing that they were holding hands. When they clarified that they weren't doing anything weird, Sebas asked if Urza killed the dragon. Urza was about to reveal what happened, but Kakyu interrupted and explained that everything went dark and he couldn't see anything, so he didn't know what happened. Urza then noticed a bunch of children. Sebas explained that they must be illegal slaves because they didn't have any magic marks that legitimate slaves had. They were crying because they were scared so much. She hugged them and comforted them that it was going to be okay now. Sebas then asked if he would like to buy Urza. He said that he wanted to, but before that, he wanted to confirm something with Urza first. He first introduced himself as a mid-level merchant and stated that he wanted her to become this child's mother. He said that when he saw her, he realized that she had something that he didn't have. She was someone he could trust, and if she was willing to accept, then he would also annul the slave contract. He wanted her to answer this not as a slave, but as his equal. He asked her if she could lend him her strength to raise this child happily. Urza recalled the reason why she was a slave and refused her request. She said that she was a criminal, and she had committed a heavy crime. To be free from slavery without atoning for her crime was not acceptable. Furthermore, she was not qualified to become a mother. Kakyu didn't insist on her any further and apologized for making an unreasonable quest. Sebas has to spend a little time preparing for departure. He wanted to help him, but he didn't want Kakyu's help. He told him to take a rest around that hovel over there. He then gave him a first aid kit and asked if he could treat Urza's wounds. While patching up her legs, Kakyu checks on her as well with the devil's eye. She had a strong sense of disappointment, suspicion, anger, and a hint of remaining royalty towards someone. Her soul was in distress. It was obvious that she was betrayed by someone she trusted, and her regret and guilt far exceeded that this must be the reason she refused. Ordinary people would have become depressed and resorted to self-destructive behavior, but in her case, she was completely calm. She had a mother's instincts ever since she was born, and this made him want her even more. He needed her deep affection. When he finished treating her wounds, they noticed that Ars was asleep in her arms. Urza slowly understood why she could trust what he said. In both times, he asked her to look after his son. He trusted her with that. She never had someone who could trust her so much. She wanted to change her mind, but she was still having trust problems. Kakyu noticed that and started talking. He said that even though she said she wasn't qualified to become a mother, he didn't agree with that. He didn't know what crime she committed, but he knew that those hands of hers that were supposed to be stained with sins had saved a lot of people's lives. He didn't know what she thought of herself, but to him, that was everything. Even after she experienced mistakes, she still risked her life to do what was right, and he needed that power of hers for him and Ars. He went a little further and asked if she thought constantly being punished was her atonement. If that crime that she committed deserved the death penalty, she would practically be a slave for life. She would be forced to do hard slave labor for the rest of her life, and might even be framed as an accomplice to a crime. Slavery was just a punishment used as a pretext for countries that could not detain criminals indefinitely. He asked if doing such a thing was the atonement that she wanted. She had had enough and started yelling at him. She said that she didn't know what else she was supposed to do, and it would be unforgivable to live happily with him. She added that someone strong like him would never understand how she felt. Ars started crying because of the yelling, so she apologized and calmed him down immediately. Kakyu accepted that he was very strong, but he can't look after Ars as well as her. He was also bad at changing diapers. He got distracted for a bit and his son got kidnapped, so he needed someone to help him. Just being powerful alone or just being honest alone was not enough for them to live well. He said that he would help her atone, in exchange for her help to raise his child. He asked what she should do to atone. She was sure that came from the justice that she believed in. This reminded her that the king told her once that managing an orphanage was his atonement. It had been 1,000 years since he had ascended the throne, and he did lots of bad things to people. He told her that there might come a time when she would have to get her hands dirty for the sake of the country. However, she shouldn't forget that the power was for the future of the children. After that, she told Kakyu that her atone for her crimes was creating a future where children could laugh happily. Now that their interests were aligned, he wanted to start by making their child laugh happily. With that, they shook hands and Kakyu promised to never betray her, and he would prove it to her. In the next scene, Urza experienced her first ever teleportation magic, and it was clear she wasn't enjoying it. Unlike her, Kakyu and Ars were having a great time soaring through the sky. As they flew, Kakyu pointed out their house and welcomed Urza earlier. A few hours before that, Urza asked him how he was going to prove that he wouldn't betray her. He responded that they were going to use the slave contract to do that. Sebas came and explained that slave contracts were a type of seal magic that forced a master-servant relationship under certain conditions. He added that at the time of the contract, to ensure that the conditions were set properly, masters could use the seal to bind the slaves and take away their freedom. She asked him if he was going to become a slave, and he confidently replied that he was. Urza couldn't understand what he was trying to achieve. He explained that from now on, they would be both master and slave to each other. He called it the mutual slave contract. If they had this, they wouldn't be able to betray each other. Sebas was thrilled because this was almost like a marriage. When Sebas said it was like a marriage, she thought this was his plan. But Kakyu objected that he hadn't planned this out before. As for the last step of the contract, Sebas asked them to stamp their blood on each other's seals. With that, it was confirmed that they became each other's slaves and masters. Back to the present, they landed safely in the front yard of their house. While Urza was looking around the house, Kakyu explained that this was an old fortress he renovated because he thought it would make a good hidden base. He invited her inside to show her the inside. The inside of the house looked like a junkyard. Urza began to twitch in irritation at the sight of the mess. Then she noticed a spot radiating dark magical energy. Kakyu explained that these were bones and skins he had collected from dragons and powerful magical beasts. He couldn't sell them all at once without raising suspicion, so they had piled up over time. He assured her they were harmless and that there was nothing to worry about. The more she learned about him, the more curious she became about his true identity. He could defeat a dragon with ease, use teleportation and flying magic, and do so without even chanting. She began to suspect that he might be either a legendary hero or a demon general. Anything else just wouldn't make sense. Moreover, she couldn't believe he actually expected people to believe his claim of being a mid-level merchant from the north. His face even resembled that of a swindler. However, when she remembered his promise to help her atone, she decided not to dwell on his true identity. Kakyu then suggested they review the terms of their contract. His condition was for her to become R's mother, while hers was for him to help her atone. Kakyu asked if her form of atonement involved helping orphans, and she confirmed it, adding that she would do her best to become a good mother. With that, Kakyu promised to take care of the field and the livestock before sunset. In the meantime, she decided to clean up the room. While Ars was sleeping, Urza lit up a candle and started cleaning the house. The house was looking perfect after a while, and she looked outside to see what Kakyu was doing. She was surprised to see him controlling a golem. She wondered what the reason for him was to hide, even though he was a very strong man. While trying to answer her questions by herself, she realized that this would never end if she kept thinking. Even she had a dark past, and he was the one who saved her life, and he was doing his best to earn her trust, even going as far as becoming her slave. She knew deep down that she already trusted him completely. This anxiety she was feeling was coming from something else. She didn't know if she was suitable to become a mother. While she was thinking about that, Kakyu finished his job and entered the house. He saw Urza lying on the floor motionless. In Urza's oldest memories, she saw herself training with her real brother. In her village, all the men and talented women became warriors. However, during their training, they were separated from women who did not fight. That was the law of the village. Even her real mother was no exception. Her father was a strict teacher and the village chief. If she didn't do her best, she would get left behind. She had a talented brother and friends who she competed with. But in her little world, it was like she had no mother. She considered her mother non-existent. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on a bed with a wet towel on her forehead, and Kakyu was right next to her sleeping. She was so surprised that she called him dear. When Kakyu woke up and saw her looking at him, he started sobbing because he was so glad that she was awake. She asked how long she had been asleep and was shocked to learn that she had been sleeping for 2.5 days. She immediately wanted to stand up, but Kakyu stopped her because she still had a slight fever. She apologized for the trouble, but he replied that it was bound to happen with those injuries. He was actually feeling guilty because he didn't let her take a rest after the fight and he couldn't use healing magic. She was quite surprised that there was magic that he couldn't use. Kakyu responded that it would be amazing if he could use all kinds of magic while playing with his gloves. When Ars started to cry, he realized that it was time for milk. He gave her a doll and told her to call him if she needed something. As she was confused, he explained that it was a portable mini Kakyu. He had inserted a spell that allowed the owners of the dolls to communicate even if they were far apart. That sounded pretty convenient. He had also prepared a vegetable soup in advance so that she could eat it right away after she had awoken. He had cast state preservation magic on it so it stayed as warm as when it was just made. This made her wonder why the person who could do those things couldn't use healing magic. Right before he left, he told her to go slow with both the soup and the water. When she was alone in the room, she noticed the stuff around her and realized that he nursed her while taking care of a child. Thanks to him, she remembered a bit about her mother. That was when she was seriously injured during training. She was bedridden just like she is now. When she woke up, she saw her mother beside her taking care of her. She didn't remember what they talked about, but she felt like she apologized to her. She probably rebelled against her husband because her cheek was bruised. The conversation wasn't anything special yet, just having her beside her was the happiest point in her childhood. She was sure that was how a mother was. Even if the child did something wrong, even if she was an unknown monster, if she just tried her best to be a parent, she was sure the feeling would come across. She started to think that she might be doing this after all. To eat the soup, she stood up but then tangled with the serum attached to her hand. She carelessly ripped off the cable but didn't consider how much pain it would cause. To stop the bleeding, she licked her hand. When she tasted the soup, her eyes teared up. The next day, she woke up feeling rested and went to the living room. Kakyu was trying to change Ars's diaper, but he managed to run away from him once again. Urza noticed that the room was messy again, even though she cleaned it before she fainted. Before Kakyu grabbed Ars, he sneezed and once again created a hole in the wall. Urza was 100% sure that there was something wrong with them. In the next scene, Urza, Kakyu, and Ars were starting their first family meeting. The topic was young Master Ars's magical rampaging. Earlier that day, Urza was already sweeping out the floor and woke Kakyu up because he said he needed to take care of the stable. When he resisted her, she took out the blank and made him fall to the ground. After that, she cleaned the floor, washed the clothes, and took care of Ars. It had been 2 days since Urza recovered from her fever. Kakyu's daily life had changed dramatically. By dividing the chores, he got more free time. Thanks to that, his training progressed smoothly, and he had gotten used to controlling his mini Kakyus. But he could only control up to 2 at the moment. Urza had lots of knowledge, and she could do everything. He really had found himself an amazing helper. However, he had one concern. While they were feeding, Ars didn't want to be fed by Kakyu and only drank the milk from Urza's hands. Kakyu felt like Ars was getting more attached to Urza than him. When Urza finished feeding Ars, she reminded him that they should have breakfast too. Before she could volunteer to prepare breakfast, Kakyu eagerly wanted to prepare it himself. He didn't want to lose and showed them that he was reliable too. He prepared a delicious horned boar steak. After praying, Urza took a bite and she loved how it tasted. Kakyu was pretty confident about his cooking skills because it was the result of many years of hard work so that he could eat all the crappy ingredients from hell. But when he also tasted the steak, he realized that it was so bad. He started to question what was wrong with the steak and wondered if he mistook sugar for salt. But Urza said it was delicious, so he was confused. She stated that each family had their own inherited taste and she almost used the kitchen for her own benefit. She thanked him for stopping her. Kakyu felt like he was slapped by her capabilities. He wondered if he had a chance of winning here. After they finished eating, Urza asked what his plan was for the day. He said that he was going to test magic to catch bugs in the field. Ars started crying and he said he would handle it. He grabbed him, trying to understand if it was a diaper problem, and he got his answer when Ars peed on him like a fountain. Kakyu was used to this kind of accident, but Urza suggested having a family meeting. Back to the meeting, Urza stated that she really thinks it is strange. Kakyu reminded her that Ars was born a bit special, but she wasn't talking about that. She explained that Ars only uses magic when he is taking care of him. Kakyu wanted her to explain it more while sweating from nervousness. She stated that the source of Ars' magical rampaging was him. Kakyu started screaming like a monkey because that was the last thing he wanted to hear. Urza reminded him that they initially thought that Ars' magic went on a rampage, but it might be an intentional outburst. For example, he might have used magic to entertain him, and when he had an outburst, he didn't scold him and kept smiling. That might cause him to think that if he used magic, he would be happy. Kakyu asked if she was saying that he had a lot of trouble up until now, and half of the factors that happened were because of him. When Urza confirmed him, he started having a breakdown. He called himself a failure as a parent and decided to become a caterpillar. Urza comforted him that it was okay. Now that they knew why he was doing it, they should be able to suppress his outbursts. She told him that as long as he did his best to be a parent, she was sure his feelings would reach him. And he was the one who made her realize this. Kakyu was shocked because she was the one who told herself that she wasn't suitable to be a mother a while ago. Urza stated that if her guess was correct, Ars was trying to make him happy. Putting aside how he did it, he must really love him. He seemed convinced enough to reveal himself, but then ended up scaring Ars. Several days had passed after their family meeting, and Urza's guess was correct. When he changed how he treated him as Urza suggested, he stopped having magical outbursts. While working, he dazed off, wondering if he was really needed in this family. He tried to stop himself from those negative thoughts. He was the only one who could take care of the livestock and field, and since he learned how to do that in Yoln village, when the wheat ripens, they won't have trouble with food for a while. If he sells it, it would be a source of profit. Thinking about that made him feel useful, so he kept working on the wheat. But the next day, the wheat field was annihilated because of the rain. Urza was shocked because that wouldn't grow around here. She explained that the staple foods around there were potatoes and rice. Since there was a rainy season and a dry season, the crops grown in the north were not suitable here. Kakyu once again started feeling bad because he felt like everything backfired. In addition to that, Ars was attached solely to Urza. Repeating that sentence in his head made him feel very jealous. He ended up slapping his cheeks to cool down a bit. He thought he was immature despite having lived for 2,000 years. He reminded himself that he had his own role in this family. He apologized to Urza and stated that he would be away from home for a few days. Urza was surprised by this sudden decision and asked where he was going. He stated that he was going to the merchant guild in the Holy City. Now that the field had been ruined, he needed to obtain some legal tender. He was going to apply to open a business and gather information to find potential buyers. He was dedicated to not failing anymore. At the Holy City Astraga, the people at the guild were shocked to see him having a letter of introduction from the great merchant Sebas. That paper made him register. He was prepared to wait a week for the review, but having connections helped him a lot. He decided to make some new connections while looking around the guild. A Lawrence merchant named Ryurin explained to him that in this country, when the rainy season comes, the Elbat River sometimes floods, which leads to the closing of the roads and ferries. Another merchant named Shurin continued to explain that at times like that, they, Lawrence merchants, would board a boat from Pomola upstream and take a detour along the forest. But a dragon appeared in Pomola the other day, and fellow dark guilds were fighting over the dragon's corpse, and for some reason the winner Vridra sealed away all the roads to the city. The only route left was still of magic beasts. He asked if they could request subjugation, and they responded that during the rainy season aquatic magic beasts would also make their way inland. All the knights and hunters were busy, so there was no one around to handle them. He suggested taking the sea routes, but she told him that they didn't have enough money. The next day, Kakyu brought a magic beast leg for them. Shurin started yelling at him, asking if he was going to tell her that he exterminated them, and how far he thought it was from there. He was there yesterday, so it was practically impossible for him to do something like that. Kakyu explained that he asked some strong mercenaries to exterminate the magic beasts before coming there, and it just so happens that the results arrived here today. Ryurin checked the leg, and it was the leg of a magic beast from around those parts without a doubt. The truth was that he hunted them himself, but he couldn't just explain this to them. They wondered why he was telling that to them. He asked if he was going to ask for money for the information. Kakyu wanted them to tell him the market prices and sales channels for the products they had, and introduce him to their business partners in exchange for the monster leg. When he went to the inn where he was staying, he contacted Urza and told her what happened. He said that tomorrow they were going to introduce him to a shipping company that they did business with. Urza congratulated him for this big haul. While telling her that they would see if it was something to celebrate tomorrow, he was grinning on the inside and wanted her to praise and worship him more because he was definitely not useless. The demon would be a demon after all. He told her that he was going to be busy tomorrow, so he just wanted to let her know that he might not be able to answer when she called. Urza prayed for the goddesses to bring him a fortune, and they hung up after saying goodbye. He lay down on his bed and felt excited because he was about to show his son that even he could be a reliable father. The next day, Silga, the Elvrant shipping merchant, was happy to continue doing business with Kakyu. At the dinner table, he stated that it was wonderful how he knew such powerful mercenaries. Being able to secure the safety of their goods during the rainy season was massive. Kakyu said he was honored and wanted to get on to business right away. He said that their products were their salts, the materials of the magic beasts that he showed him, and their meat. While he was explaining, Urza called him. They wondered what that noise was, and he tried to hang up immediately. He was confused because he told her he wouldn't be able to pick her up. Silga asked if he was okay, and he said that he was and wanted to continue their conversation. He had been failing at home. There was nothing much he was useful for, even at work. He didn't want to let this end in failure, so he drank with his client after their meetings and bonded. After drinking and getting drunk, they shook hands and separated. When he went to the inn, he was thinking about the praises he would get from Urza and Ars when he got home. Come to think of it, the golem had been ringing all day, so he wondered if something had happened. He called her to ask her and tell her about today's result. But when Urza picked up, she told him that they were in trouble, and it was about Ars in panic. Kakyu froze for a moment and then immediately transported to his home. When he went inside in a hurry, the house was hot like a sauna. Urza explained that Ars contracted a fever at noon, but he started burning up half an hour ago. Now he understood why she was calling. He asked what caused it, and she said that she didn't know. He didn't have a rash, and his breathing was normal. She had never seen this kind of fever, so she was as clueless as Kakyu in this matter. Kakyu could not create medicine for it if he didn't know what was causing it. He wondered if he should get a doctor, but it might be his dragon's attribute causing it. He wished to be able to use healing magic, but he didn't even know if it was something that could be cured with magic. Erza had an idea and stated that she was going to collect herbs that usually help with fevers. He didn't want her to do that because there was heavy rain outside and it was midnight. Erza responded that he didn't know much about the plants around there and she could see pretty well at night. Besides, he should be the one with him instead of her. She didn't let him talk and left the house in a hurry. Once again, Kakyu stood there and felt like he was a useless father. Hearing R's voice, he looked at him and R's grabbed his finger while smiling as if he were trying to cheer up his father. Kakyu couldn't help but tear up because, even though he couldn't do anything, his son was comforting him. While crying and apologizing to him, Erza came back. Kakyu was surprised that she returned rather early. She said that she was going to collect them, but she found something at the forest's entrance and remembered. It was the Devil's Walking Stick. It was a type of magic tree that could grow rapidly by consuming a large amount of magic power. When she tied it lightly to R's wrist, the stick started growing and became a giant tree. Erza was glad that it worked while Kakyu was puzzled. She explained that she heard about this from a village elder a long time ago. The babies of races that possess powerful magic like elves would rarely have a condition where their body cannot keep up with their growing magic power, and it would go out of control. It was a really magic rampage. The Devil's Walking Stick had absorbed his magic power, so his fever should go down soon. Kakyu was so relieved and glad that Erza was there. He felt like a fool for focusing so much on himself that he failed to notice what was around him. He made a contract with her exactly because he couldn't do it himself. Yet he was overtaken by jealousy. He tried to make up for his failures with work, but in the end, he neglected his son. Erza stopped him from underestimating himself because when he wasn't home, Ars would cry so much that she couldn't handle it, especially when he started having a fever. But having him here was the most calming thing possible for him, and for Erza as well. Erza told exactly what Kakyu needed, and he thanked her for those words. R's occasional magic outbursts must have been preventing Ars from having a magic rampage. However, it would happen eventually. They decided to use the Devil's Walking Stick to absorb his magic power regularly. Erza reminded him that his job was his work and her job was the housework. They both were going to do their best in their respective areas of expertise, and not suppress their feelings and share opinions. The next day, Erza made breakfast and asked him to take a bite. Kakyu was trying to understand what this cursed thing was. She made something called Isekai'd hoof of goat and paw of a bear with undercooked mushroom sauce. He tried to not judge the book by its cover and convinced himself that it would taste good. But when he tasted it, they decided to let Kakyu do the cooking from now on because it was horrendous. In the next scene, Kakyu dreams of sitting at a bar with Arno, sharing drinks, and discussing the challenges of raising children. Arno confided that he felt a deep sense of responsibility, knowing he had to protect his children or risk losing them, and this had helped him grow as a parent. Kakyu could relate as he also felt his existence was validated by living for Ars. His dedication to Ars was his proof of existence. He realized he was already becoming a good father, and now all that was left was to become a good husband. When he mentioned that he was doing his best, Arno teased him, asking if he had kissed Erza yet. Kakyu tried to explain that his relationship with Erza was purely contractual and nothing more. But Arno and his wife found his response unmanly. They joked that if Alma knew, she would be disappointed in him. Arno then pressed him, asking if he truly didn't like Erza. But the truth was that he was just worried about being a demon. Arno then playfully claimed that despite his age, he had never kissed a woman before. Kakyu denied it, sweating nervously and avoiding eye contact. To make a point, Arno leaned in to give an example of a kiss, and as Kakyu tried to stop him, he suddenly woke up, bumping his head into Erza. Erza informed him that she had been trying to wake him since it was already morning. It was July 1014 according to the holy calendar, and Ars grew up a lot. That day, while Kakyu was taking care of goats, Ars came and asked who that little goat was. Kakyu was surprised that he came there all by himself again, and reminded that he would get scolded by his mother. He grabbed him and explained that the baby goat was born this morning. He told him to treat it gently as his big brother. Ars's eyes sparkled at the phrase big brother. After all, today was his birthday. It had been 1 year since Kakyu started raising Ars. He didn't know when he was born, so he decided to use the day he found him as his birthday. After Ars blew up his candles, Kakyu and Erza took out their presents. Kakyu brought the Encyclopedia of Magical Creatures, while Erza bought him 2 major languages guidebooks and a historical compendium. Kakyu was shocked because he thought it was too early for him to learn languages, but Erza defended herself by saying that in her village, as soon as babies could stand, they started receiving education for the gifted. But Kakyu stated that she should have thought about these inhuman standards. However, Erza objected that age and race didn't matter. What was important was what Ars was interested in. Just because he disliked studying, he shouldn't assume him. Kakyu denied her accusations and stated that he studied hard to learn the Lurian language. Ars was watching them having a debate and started crying because he thought they were fighting. They were devastated by how cute he was, asking them not to fight. They explained that they weren't fighting. Realizing what was important, they apologized to each other for their mistakes. One day, Ars wanted to go bug catching. Urza was confused and thought he wanted to do that for food. But Kakyu explained that it was for entertainment. Ars said he wanted to catch the creatures he saw in the encyclopedia. Urza didn't think the creatures in the encyclopedia could be found around here. They started walking around in the forest and told Ars to not go too far. Ars had already found a big bug and showed it to his parents. Kakyu said he also used to catch bugs often when he was a kid. When she smiled and stated that she wished she could have seen that, Ars remembered his dream when Arno asked him if he had kissed her yet. Suddenly, a bat scared Urza and she leaned on Kakyu for support. When their eyes met, they both immediately went far away from each other because they were shy. While they had this awkward silence, Ars started pointing at something and called Bobo. When they went to see what it was, they encountered an injured juvenile, a fire dragon. Kakyu figured that Ars was trying to say that the fire dragon was his brother. Urza grabbed Ars thinking it would be dangerous for him, but he started crying and immediately went to the dragon and hugged it. Kakyu tried to calm Urza, but she started scolding him because he might get bitten and fall ill, and reminded him that the dragon's parents might be around, and the damage could kill them. When the dragon saw Urza's death stare, it was scared and ran away, causing Ars to start sobbing. In the end, that day, Ars kept crying until he slept. The next day, he would often look at the forest with a concerned expression. Urza started to worry about him. Meanwhile, Kakyu woke up in a panic because he completely overslept and tried to get dressed as quickly as possible. He told Urza that there was a big auction in Pomola today, and he didn't know when the item he was aiming for was going to be auctioned. While wearing the gloves Alma gave him, he accidentally ripped them off. He started freaking out more because he can't wear that in this state, but he didn't have much time left. He decided to leave them there and fix it when he got back. He apologized to Urza and promised to clean it up when he got home. But she didn't think she could just leave a huge mess and wait for him to clean up, especially when a child was around. She noticed that the pair of gloves he treasured very much were ripped. He had an idea and decided to teach him a little lesson. At the Port Town Pomola auction hall, there was a big crowd and lots of competitions. Shuren saw Kakyu and called him over. Kakyu mentioned that there seemed to be a lot of people with a rough demeanor, and she explained that it had been like this ever since Vridra took control, and that slave was illegal. Apparently, a bounty had finally been placed on the head of a guild executive, who asked Kakyu if it wasn't a job for the mercenaries. When people heard the name of him, they started whispering about Kakyu. They heard that he worked way faster than hunters and adventurers, yet no one had even seen him. Kakyu had no idea that his lies about the mercenaries had become a hot topic. The next one was a 20-year-old wine from the Calamira Church Nation, produced by Dorashade, and the price started from 20,000. While people were offering reasonable amounts, Kakyu raised his hand and gave 200,000. Shuren was shocked that he would bid 10 times the initial price. He explained that it had been almost a whole year since he met his wife, and she was a deeply religious woman. She often says that she wants to visit the sacred land, the Church Nation. That was the reason why he wanted to at least let her taste the wine from there. Shuren was surprised that he was so considerate of his wife. Ryurin agreed and gave him something as his daily gratitude. He said it wasn't something special, but it was a stunning ring. Not to mention, he gave him a couple's ring. Kakyu had fallen for her over the year he had been with her, but he was a demon. He was different from normal creatures. His life exists in his soul, and his body is merely a vessel of magical energy. Demons cannot leave behind offspring, and they increase their number by forming a contract with the soul of the deceased and turning them into demons. Just like how he was made by a demon by Satan. That was the reason why he didn't have the reproductive instinct or ability that normal living creatures had. He had already noticed Urza's feelings, and there was no need to look into her soul, but the feelings he had for her might be something that came from when he was a human, so it might be an illusion. He wondered if he really had the qualifications to give her this ring. He recalled the time Alma gave him the gloves and thought this time it might be different. The rain started and Ars was still looking out of the window in worry. Urza said his dad had teleportation magic, so the rain was nothing for him. Kakyu arrived and she welcomed him. He noticed that the place was clean, so he asked where his stuff was. Urza said she disposed of them as he seemed that he didn't need them. She was just kidding. It was stored properly and she had also fixed the glove. She thought Kakyu would figure it out right away and learn from this experience, but Kakyu started shaking her shoulders and yelled at her. He asked her if she couldn't tell how much he treasured that glove. Urza was shocked and responded that there was no way she wouldn't be able to tell. Kakyu was even more frustrated and shocked that she would throw them away even though she knew it. Urza told him that he shouldn't have left something so precious lying around like that, and it was damaged, so it was impossible to tell it apart from trash. He crossed the line and asked her if that was also a custom in their town. He wondered if elves offered them up to the goddess in a ritual when there were damaged items. What he got as an answer was a slap in the face. Urza left the room and Kakyu told Ars, who was looking at him with torn eyes, that he needed some time alone. The rain continued while Kakyu was drinking wine in his room. He had been searching for the gloves for a very long time and he couldn't find them. He couldn't believe she just threw them away. He wondered what she was trying to say after she said there was no way she wouldn't be able to tell. He poured another glass of wine and drank it. He couldn't stop himself from crying because of the guilt he felt towards Alma. His door knocked and it was Urza, asking if he had seen Ars. Meanwhile, Ars was out in the forest. They started looking for him and luckily, even though it was hard to tell through the rain, he could still see traces of his soul. Urza apologized for hitting him, but Kakyu stated that it was him who made her mad, and he ridiculed her hometown's customs, so he was sorry for that too. While Urza was trying to say something, he stopped her because he found Ars. He was sleeping with the fire dragon he found the other day. Apparently he came here to save it. While looking at them cuddling, Kakyu asked if she would still scold him even after seeing this, and she responded that it would be improper to do that. After that, Urza took out the gloves and gave them to him. Kakyu asked why she lied about it and she explained that she just thought she wanted to tease him. She had seen his sloppy and pathetic side since she started living with him, but she couldn't imagine him being genuinely angry. There were times she believed he could see deep inside her mind. He understood her more than she understood herself, so she thought he would never say anything that would hurt her. With that, she had become dependent on him, and she hit him because she was dismayed. Kakyu thought this might be his fault for using his devil's eye too much. She started bowing at him and apologizing for what she did, but he stopped her and apologized for not being able to respond to her faith. To lighten the mood, Kakyu reminded her that this all happened because he didn't keep his stuff tidy. They giggled and Urza said her attention was drawn to his otherworldly side and she was putting him on a pedestal. Therefore, she was relieved that he was also a human being. In the past, some people treated Kakyu like a human. However, he refused to notice it and escaped from it. As a result, he lost that opportunity forever. Things were different now. Even if his feelings were an illusion, he didn't want to run from them anymore and took a big step forward. On his knees, he showed Urza the couple ring he had been given. While stating that this was not related to their contract, he took her hand in his and proposed to her. Urza was surprised for sure, but she didn't make him wait and agreed to marry him. In the next scene, Kakyu was explaining things to Urza. He informed her that Ars was the son of his late friend. He also explained why he ran far away to this place. After he proposed to her, he told her everything other than the fact that he was a demon from another world, and that the bandits he attacked were actually the Holy Knights. And Urza told him that her sin was an assassination attempt on the King of Lawrence. She told her about her past and about when she was an intelligence operative. She told her about her hometown and about being betrayed by the first prince. She asked if he was disappointed in her after learning about her past, and he responded that he was just surprised. It was nothing like disappointment. He told her when they made the contract that he believed in Urza that he had seen. He asked if she was feeling disappointed, and she replied that she felt the same as him. 1 year and 8 months later, after starting to raise Ars, he got a lot bigger, and with him, the fire dragon he found grew too. 3 things had changed since that great rainy day. The first one was when the Ars made a new friend for the first time. His name was Bors, and Kakyu named him by combining Bobo and Ars. Following Ars' wishes, he officially became a part of their family. The second one was that Ars could use healing magic. If his various magic attributes came from the dragon meat, the healing magic must be from his latent talent. Urza said proudly that healing magic was so rare it was considered a divine blessing, which means Ars was a prodigy. And the last one was that Kakyu was thinking of obtaining nobility. Urza asked why and how he wanted to do this because it was a difficult path. Kakyu explained that their status was just that of a small merchant and his wife who could be easily swept away. Furthermore, they had criminal records. If this were to be exposed, the consequences would be severe. To safely raise their child, they needed to have a decent status. Urza responded that he was jumping to conclusions because if that was the case, the merchant's privileges should be more than enough. But this brings them to the second reason why he wanted to be noble. He stated that he wanted enough power to crush the bastard that set her up. Urza's first reaction was nothing. She froze. She then stated that this was too reckless of him. Kakyu asked if she thought it was the first prince who set her up. She said no, but they, as intelligence operatives, could discern the orders of the royal family through their contract magic. Even if they transformed using magic or magical tools, they would be able to tell if they weren't a member of the royal family. Kakyu said that another member of the royal family must have assumed his form. However, Urza thought there was no way. He explained to her that there was no reason for the first prince to kill the king, as he was first in line for succession. Rather, it would make more sense if it were the work of the second prince or someone further down the line to bring down the first prince. She asked if he was saying he was going to become a noble to find their identity. She was puzzled as to why he would go to such lengths. Kakyu reminded her that he promised to help her atone for her sins. If her atonement involved inheriting the king's will, then she can't ignore the king's peril. This was also part of his promise. He kneeled for his wife and stated that he always thoroughly fulfilled the promises he made. Meanwhile, Ars was playing with boars. He was jumping around and attacking boars with all her power because he was a strong dragon. Erza warned Ars to play without kicking up any dust because she was washing clothes. He was completely focused on his hero game. She asked Kakyu if he was going out, and he said that he was going to be busy in preparation for that issue they talked about. When he left, Ars came with a book in his hand and wanted her to read him. Erza started reading the book to Ars and boars. The hero in the book had the same name as Ars, so he really liked it. When the book ended with the hero marrying his fiancée, Ars wondered if she had a wedding. Erza tried to explain that only nobles would do such a thing, and things were quite busy now. Boars and Ars looked at each other and they both had an idea. They started running and Erza warned them not to leave her sight. While thinking about the wedding, she recalled their meeting with Kakyu the other day. She told him that his plan to become a noble would take quite a while. He knew that, and that's why things were going to be busy from now on, and he would probably be away from home more often, at least over the next 5 years. Just thinking about this made her face all red. She slapped herself and tried to pull herself together. She continued her day by doing chores and taking care of Ars while he was working on something with boars. As dusk settled in, Erza called Ars to come inside, but she found him standing there alone, crying his eyes out. Worried, she rushed over and asked if he was hurt and what had happened. When he pointed at Boars, Erza turned to the dragon and asked if he had done something to upset Ars. Boars quickly denied it, and Ars clarified that it wasn't Boars. While Erza was trying to figure out what was wrong, Kakyu arrived. Seeing everyone with teary eyes, Kakyu asked what was going on. Erza explained that Ars had wanted to prepare a wedding ceremony for his mother, but it hadn't turned out as he hoped. Surprised, Erza hugged Ars to comfort him and thanked him for his effort. Realizing what she was doing, she quickly tried to explain to Kakyu that it wasn't that she wanted a wedding, and she understood they didn't have time for such things. Kakyu, blushing, replied that he never said they wouldn't have a wedding. As Kakyu looked around at the ceremony Ars had prepared, he noticed the stone seats for the guests, a wooden arch, and a heart made of flowers. Kakyu patted Ars on the head, praising him for his amazing effort. Now it was time for the father to add his own special touches. Kakyu, with great attention to detail, transformed the ceremony into a dreamlike event for his wife. Ars was in awe. Erza, concerned, asked if it was okay to use so much magic. Kakyu reassured her that while using such flashy magic usually wasn't allowed, it would be fine just for tonight. As she was about to take his hand, Kakyu suddenly remembered something. With a wave of his magic, he transformed her into a stunning bride. He explained that he had been secretly planning this wedding ever since he proposed, and asked what she thought of it all. Ars then handed her a bouquet of flowers, and Erza couldn't hold back her tears, telling them both that she was blissfully happy. They began to walk down the aisle together. Kakyu sent a light spell into the sky, creating a dazzling display of lights above them. Underneath the beautiful glow, he expressed that he was eagerly looking forward to their future together. Erza shared his sentiments, and they ended the ceremony with a tender kiss. Meanwhile, suspicious eyes behind the Knight of Blessings were watching them. That is the end of the recap for now. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.